Daniel
Okay.
Paulson, you're doing the introduction today, and we're, of course, joined with a wonderful guest, and it's all yours, Daniel.
Well, thank you, Patrick. We got Karoline Meyer, multiple freediving champion from Brazil, and we also got our master instructor, Juliana Del Corso, with us. So welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, well, I'm you know, two people from Brazil, so it'd be very interesting. We've had a lot of Swedish people on so far, so I'm very, very excited to talk to somebody who's a freediver, who's really mastered the breath. So normally, Karoline, we start off before we get into freediving with your background. So could you tell us how you, a little bit about your background and how you ended up doing freediving?
Okay, so I'm very glad to be here, to be invited for you guys. And I'm a fan of Oxygen Advantage, so since the beginning. And well, when I was a child, I always loved the water, but the crucial point when I decided to compete was when I could unite my passion for the water, I united it to the other sports, because I love it to practice several sports in my life. So when I found freediving, I united these two passions. And then I started training when I was 20 years old, 28 years old.
And how did you get into, and how did you know that you were, I know we've actually talked before, that you had some sort of talent from the first time?
I did my dives without counting the depth or the time, but when I always went to the sea with the guys, the spearfishing guys, and the spearfishing guys told me that I stood longer than them, but I never pay attention about it, but they told me. And one day they requested me to do an apnea in front of them, and I did the 4 minutes, almost 4 minutes for my first time. And after that, I started looking for the champions around the world, and I found the French people, and I started to talk with the world champion and the Lessos from Reunion Island. And I decided to start to training and talking by emails and with the French group. And one day they invited me to go to France to training. And I went for 3 months. Next year, the other year, I went for more 3 months, and then I never stopped to training.
Yeah.
Then I reached the world record.
How old were you? What age when this happened?
28, 29.
So that was a hidden talent for many years, because most people who become a world champion in anything, they know when they're teenagers or younger that they're very good at whatever sport, and they practice football. Like I know in Brazil, everybody plays football, but tennis or ice hockey or whatever sport. But at 28, that is very late. Must have been very exciting to know that you had such a talent for freediving.
I think that freediving, you do not require you an explosion or an aerobic hypertrophic muscles or an aerobic system too much. In the beginning, you need a lot of aerobic level training. And young people is a little bit nervous than the old people, a little bit stressed, and don't control a lot the state of mind. So when you are a little bit older and you understand better many situations, then your psychological side is better than a young people normally. So you are more able to accept many situations that freediving impose to you.
Yeah, because I think potentially one of the hardest sports really in the world, because any other sport, you can kind of get off the train when you feel like, okay, it's not working today. But once you're at 100 meters depth, you can't really say, okay, I'm done. You kind of, you roll the dice. So it's very interesting how you can control and be relaxed, because if you're not relaxed, you use up your oxygen. So you have to be able to relax on demand in a very tough environment. So that's, how do you manage to do that?
In the beginning, I try to control the breath is very important. And many people think that the most important thing for free diving is the lung of the sides, but it's not at all. And it's not a little bit of all the most important part of the free diving. It's about how to breathe better outside the water and how to breathe in a cellular situation, not only put air inside a big lung. So I learned a lot to how to do this cellular breathing, and it was very important also for me for free diving, this part, how to learn how to breathe, but mainly the cellular respiration.
Wouldn't you say, Patrick, that this goes hand in hand with oxygen advantages insofar as how you breathe throughout the day and throughout the night, the 23 hours plus, and then you had the adaptation phase with
I love hearing that sentence, that it was your breathing outside of the water that influenced your breathing inside the water. Like, Karoline, that's pretty amazing. I've measured, I don't know, maybe 8,000 people's breath hold times, and I can tell you one thing: nobody ever presented 4 minutes straight off the bat. And I understand it was a maximum breath hold, but even still, it's a pretty. You weren't hyperventilating before that, were you? Did you have normal breathing, and then you breathe in and held your breath for as long as you can, or did you breathe out? And can you remember your first apnea that you did with the spear fisherman?
In the beginning, I did a high hyperventilation.
Oh, you did hyperventilation,
very high. Now I know how to do it. And also, in the beginning, was a kind of a disaster, a panic apnea. So it was completely wrong. Now what I do is short apneas. I breathe well outside water. I do short apneas to induce the diving reflex, to induce the cellular respiration. And these short apneas prepare myself to balance also the parasympathetic side of the mind. And then I know that I'm able to free dive. Then I do 2 or 3 short free diving to improve the diving reflex. And then I'm sure that I will do my best in best conditions. Then, so in the beginning was completely disaster, because I did a big hyperventilation. I always go outside the water close to a blackout, always, because due it to the CO2 level so low. And when I try to, yes,
you hyperventilate to get your CO2 level so low. And
yes,
then
so low.
Yes.
And when I feel one contraction, it's time to breathe immediately, because I was in a very low oxygen level.
Yes.
Always.
Yeah. Just a diving reflex, because some of our listeners may not be familiar with it. Are you talking specifically about the spleen, or is there other effects?
Also, the spleen contractions, you can have it without touch the water. But the first reflex was the short apneas outside the water, exactly to do it, the spleen contraction. But also to train the rib cage to be stop is also a kind of warm up for us, because we hold short apneas, we hold and the rib cage expand, and then you are telling to the brain that it will start the short apneas. The brain is ready to the biggest apnea, your maximum. And then you touch the water. When you touch the water, you have this place around your eyes. This place, when you touch the water, you feel the body start to improve the vessels contractions.
Yes. Yes. So your blood vessels your peripheral blood circulation constricts.
Yes, constricts.
To conserve blood flow and oxygen for the brain and the
protect,
heart.
Yes, to protect lungs, brain, and heart. So the bradycardia too. Mm-hmm. So we have our body start to be more economic, mm-hmm. to take more oxygen for the main organs. That is the diving reflex.
Yes.
Does it matter? Does it go down? I mean, the diving reflex, you get a stronger one if you have colder water. So what would be the optimal temperature for you to dive in for a freediving world record? Would you go to a place where it's a little bit cooler, like 10 or 15 Celsius?
I prefer, I always use a wetsuit because you can't feel cold, but you must feel cold around here.
Okay.
It's the most important part. Okay. Not around all the body, but around here is very important.
What does that do?
Difference. Sorry?
What does that do? Is it stimulating your vagus nerve, or is it stimulating the vagus
nerve?
Yes,
two. It's also this difference around this ocular globe is one kind of stimulation.
Okay.
That's cool.
It's the mammalian response, right?
The scientists discovered that 40 years ago, that if you are with your clothes, but if you put only your face in the water, you can check this kind of diving reflex, because the main part is around the eyes. It's amazing.
Yeah. So there's something really natural and normal for human beings to dive. It's an essential part of our evolution.
Yeah, many scientists tell that it's because the diving reflex. Many scientists tell that we have an origin from the water, and because all of us have this kind of reflex, not only freediving athletes. We just have it more acute.
The mammalian response, right? The name.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's the same.
So it's interesting that you are using some of the same techniques that we're introducing to the athletes, to simulate high altitude training to get the spleen contraction. But you take it obviously a step further, because when you do freediving, you get the mammalian response. But you also do static apnea outside the water as well. And then if you do that, do you still dip your head in water to get the reflex, or you're not allowed to do it?
No. When I don't have some people to be my safety, I normally train outside the water.
Yeah.
And I know that it's strongest than training in the water. And I have the spleen contractions, but I don't have the diving reflex. But that is why it's very difficult to train outside the water. It's a strong dive for us. And sometimes I decided to train outside exactly because I will find a strong training for me. Yeah. And we have several exercises to improve the training. As you told me about this altitude training that you have. Yeah. It's almost similar, because we improve this hematocrit.
Hematocrit.
Yes. And we do it exactly to improve our performance outside the water too.
Your oxygen carrying capacity. Do you mind if I ask you what your hematocrit would be? Do you get it tested, or is it just information you wish to hold on to for yourself?
Sorry?
What would a typical free diver hematocrit be? So normally for a female, it's between 36 to 44%.
No, it's bigger.
It's bigger.
No, for me, yeah. My level is around 43, 44. Okay. And then when you go to the water, you must pay attention, because if you are not well hydrated,
yes,
then the level can be higher.
Yes.
So we pay attention to about it.
In the manual, I mean, Oxygen Advantage manual, there's a lot of examples about and research on freediving, and I think one is saying that it's actually a permanent increase for a lot of freedivers with a hematocrit value of 5% in units, which rings well with what you're saying, 44, so 5% higher than a normal woman.
Yeah.
So you don't have just a temporary, which you get from the spleen contraction. You also have a permanent from all those years of practice, it seems. Maybe it's lower now, I don't know, but it seems like you get both a temporary and a permanent shift. So
yeah,
that's interesting. Would you say that people are using, any freedivers use hyperventilation now, or is that something only back in the good old days when people use, or they just try to relax now with different techniques?
It's an old technique for sure, because it's dangerous, and then today we avoid it. We just pay attention about exactly to the main part is the relaxation. Mm-hmm. And we call our ventilations a kind of a super ventilation. Then I try to spend no more than 3 minutes breathing. We have the mask around the face, so we need to breathe through the mouth.
Okay.
That we can breathe through the nose. A super ventilation, it's a ventilation that is not exactly the necessary for the moment. It's a little bit more, but not a big ventilation. So we pay attention to don't be tired, the rib cage tired. Yes. Don't elevate the heartbeat, and balance the nervous system to don't be too much relaxed and not too much stressed, because you must be focused to go down. Yeah. And you must be prepared to the maximum. So you can't stress it a lot outside and start to dive tired. So we pay attention a lot about it. So the super ventilation is something about a special ventilation, not so calm, not so parasympathetic, but we try to we use the belly. I normally use the belly and a little bit upper. And the rhythm is important, because I change the rhythm to get in the focus state. The rhythm interfere on it. Not this. I don't use all the lung during this moment. Is 1 or 2 minutes, but the rhythm, it's a little bit strong, and I pay attention. Yes, faster. And I pay attention about the signals to the CO2 level is not so low, because to don't be in a hyperventilated state. So it's that.
Okay, this is really interesting, Daniel, because achieving a flow state is something that's not just for beneficial to freediving, but this is for any person, you know.
Yeah.
And we have our own routine in terms of we activate the body's relaxation response first. And we do it by breathing light, by breathing slow, and by breathing low. and this is a calming effect on the mind. And then we do 2 easy breath holds and 5 strong breath holds to get spleen contraction. And maybe just before a person goes out onto a game, they exhale some carbon dioxide from the mouth just to lower any acidity. And I think we're all looking to replicate flow states, and you're doing it slightly different. So it sounds as if you're increasing the respiratory rate, so it's that little bit faster, but the tidal volume, which is the size of each breath, it doesn't seem as if you're changing that. In other words, you're not having an effect on minute ventilation. It's a faster respiratory rate, but are you keeping the tidal volume, which is the size of each breath, a little bit more or a little bit less or the same? I'm just wondering the effect on the overall minute ventilation. What impact is it having?
I think the tidal a little bit bigger than the tidal volume.
Yes,
a little bit
normal.
bigger. Yeah.
So you're slightly hyperventilating, but you're doing it controlled,
Yes.
that your carbon dioxide levels don't go down too much. And
Yes.
the reason being is because if your CO2 levels are too low, if you go into the water, you're not going to feel the sensation to breathe. So there's a risk of underwater blackout. Is that the main reason? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. But we pay a lot of attention. We are very far from hyperventilation. Very far.
Yes. It's amazing. Amazing.
Yeah. I mean, for me, freedivers must be the ones who are mostly in tune with their breathing before they're going in. So it seems to me that you reduce your CO2 slightly versus if you're a tennis player or a football player, you would increase it slightly because you want to get an increase, a slight air hunger before this. So you're moving the other way slightly. So it's all about calibrating the stress level, because I'm sure that you're very stressed before you go down 100 meters. So you need to be able to handle that in various ways. But I don't think there's any sport where you're that meticulous about your breathing before, because it's everything. That's what you're doing. But ironically, you don't breathe. You hold your breath. So I think the sports world could learn a lot. Any sport, really.
Totally. Can I ask 2 questions, because they're bugging me now? One is, what do you think allows you to hold your breath for so long? What factors do you think are playing a role? Relaxation is one factor, the cognitive component, surrendering into the air hunger and being able to cope with that feeling of suffocation. There are other factors as well, Karoline. Have you ever thought about what factors are allowing you to have such a long breath hold? Do you think it's CO2 tolerance? Do you think it's discomfort signals from the diaphragm? What do you think is going on? You have a spleen contraction, which allows you to, I don't know. So what do you think?
I think the training, the acceptation of the contractions is a mental training too. This part, the mental training is very important, because when you start to training and you feel the urge to breathe, it's a kind of shock state, because when you feel it, you feel immediately that you will die if you don't breathe. So you start to accept it, you start to understand. So you change psychologically, because you know what is the contraction, you know what is happening, and you want to do it, to do a performance. So it's a very important moment when you can improve, when you decide to improve. So you have the first part, that is a chemical adaptation. The CO2 and the oxygen level are a chemical adaptation for your body. Then the psychological adaptation becomes with the information and how do you understand the process, and also how do you accept the suffering moment, and how do you accept the pressure the water pressure, and how do you focus on what you need to do. So the training is very complex, but the mind guides you and the body just to adapt with this chemical and the water pressure too. What happens underwater? We have other problems, issues underwater, like narcosis, and you must control it, and you will control it with your mind. It's very difficult moment when you cross 40 meters and went to 120 meters. You have your synapses in your mind, your brain start to fail, and you start to see and imagine things. You start to hear noises, and it's very difficult to keep the focus. So the mind is always the main part. So that is why many times in my training days, I use it to train the apnea, but also the mind together, thinking about the dive. I try to visualize the whole dive. Always both training is very important to improve. So I think in the beginning, I had a good CO2 tolerance, because without training, I realized that I accepted the contractions since the beginning. That is why a kind of skill that I had in the past. But the others, even if you have skills, but if you don't training and if you don't accept the conditions, and if you are not strong in your mind, you don't go beyond.
So how many hours per day, or how often did you train when you were at your peak level?
You can be effective without many hours. If you train well, correctly, I think 2 hours is enough. If you balance during the week, all the training is not always the same, but if you balance it, then I think 2 hours is enough.
So, and do you do other types of training, like physical training, like in addition, and swimming and so on, or is that included?
I love it to cycling. So I practice cycling 6 days per week. So when I'm cycling, I train in free diving too. Because we move you must move your legs, and it's very similar to when you kick your fins.
Okay. So
it's very nice training, and you can do aerobic and aerobic training cycling. So I love to cycling. I love to bodyboarding, and I love also running. I love yoga. If you leave me to do everything that I want to do, I don't have a time to do everything.
So one thing that's very interesting to me is, I mean, these are one of those sports that I don't think anybody really can relate to deep diving if you haven't done it yourself. So could you take us through, like, up to when you were trying to set a world record, like the day before, with sleep, which is a big interest to us, because you would be maybe a little bit nervous. So what would you be doing the 24 hours leading up to an event? Because that would be very interesting to know.
I think 1 month before I start to change to the goal to do it. So I have a plan, and I try to improve the sleep, how many hours sleeping very well. I pay attention a lot about it. I take serious the sleep. And around 3 days before, I avoid to eat steak, or I just eat pasta, and I avoid to caffeine and other drinks. Yes, and sleep well all the time. Then I try to control. I do the exercise to be relaxed. I like a lot mantras, to the exercise for the mind, to take the mind stable. And I like to repeat the mantras because put me in a real calm state.
Yeah.
So I pay attention with breath, and if I find some signal of stress, I do a short apneas, around 20 or 30 seconds, 10 short apneas, and I get into a nice state again. Because I'm also, I realized that I'm nervous, and I try. The difference is that you can control, you can feel it and control it, and that is what I do. So I also feel nervous, but I try to do it. Sleep well and short apneas. If I feel out of control, then I stop, and short apneas, and I put me in my calm state again.
Yeah, and what about, when is it the most nervous moment? Is it like a few hours before, the night before, or right before you do the dive?
Right before, you will be in a bad situation. So I think you have moments, then you have adrenaline moments hours before. So you have some moments that you feel, oh God, then you control, you feel God, you control again. So when you go to the record minutes before, you are in a flow state, I think, because you are in a flow state. It's a state that anything can interfere anymore. I'm closer to do it. So when I'm putting my wetsuit, when I start to do my warm-ups, I'm completely involved to do it. Nothing interfere anymore.
You're probably, I would say then, at the borderline of alpha and theta, brain waves. So you're in that flow state. And would you say that, do you know what your pulse rate is when you go in, and do you know how much it drops, your heart rate, how much it goes from, like, say 45 to 20 in the water? Do you know? Have you had? Yeah.
Yes, when I did the record to Guinness Book, and I was doing the warm-up, and I checked my heartbeat. My heartbeat is around 43 in the morning, but what I do is short apneas. I hold my breath with a full lung, but also I hold my breath with empty lung. And when I do the empty lung, I had 25 heartbeats per minute when I breathe out and hold the breath. So it was the minimum.
Can I ask you, when you breathe out and hold so when you breathe in and hold your breath, you fill your lungs and hold your breath. And if you breathe out, do you breathe in? Do you breathe out to functional residual capacity? Is it a normal exhalation?
Yes.
Normal exhalation, yes. And then you hold your breath.
Yes. I don't force to breathe out. It's
yes.
a normal, yes. It's a passive expiration.
Yes, a passive expiration to FRC, and you're holding the breath, but you're not doing a maximum. You're only holding the breath for short duration.
No, no, I don't force.
You don't force
short
it,
apneas.
Yes, yes.
And what's short for you?
Short.
20, 30 seconds, or how long would you say in seconds that you hold your breath?
In seconds, without force, the expiration, I think 45 seconds, no more than this. The intention is not force.
Okay.
It's just to calm down and get into the diving reflex is the main purpose.
And then you rest for how long? Like a minute or two?
Two.
And then you do
2 minutes.
Roughly how many times? How many times?
I improve a little bit in the beginning. I do short apneas, 2-3 short apneas with air and without air. And then I improve the warm-ups until I feel the contraction. When I feel the contraction, I stop.
Okay.
And then the interval is bigger. It's around 3 or until 5 minutes.
Okay.
And then I go to the maximum.
So you build it up slowly to get to the level where you get contractions, and then you stop. So you kind of build it up slowly, almost like you're walking, then you're jogging, like the same to get your muscles, but now it's your breath. So once you feel it, you bring it down again. So it's supposed to be just pure relaxation when you do it. Okay, very, very interesting. So a very interesting question also, how does it feel when you're at such a great depth? Is there a progression of feelings from the water level down to the bottom and then when you go up again? Is it possible to describe that feeling during that? And how long does it take? 2 to 3 minutes?
When I reached 121 meters, it was a total dive time is 3 minutes 15 seconds around it. But what I think during this travel, and first I must pay attention about the technical issues like equalization. This is the most important part. So I focused on it because the speed improve and you can't lose the equalization. So I pay attention around my ears all the time to put air around my mouth, because we must have a flexible diaphragm to put air inside the mouth to equalize the ears, and it's very important for me. Then if I succeed and I improve the depth, I start to feel like I never open my eyes going down with the machine, never.
Okay.
So I just open my eyes on the bottom when the machine stops. And then I open my eyes and I feel that, yes, I reach it. So it's an emotion, but you just perceive that you are in a special place where you are nothing, like I told yesterday. Yeah. You feel that you are united with the sea. You are nothing, but you are everything at the same time. It's a very strange and good sensation. It's a good sensation. It's amazing.
I've heard
and then you need to go up.
Because I've heard somebody say it's the ultimate meditation to free dive, and I don't know, since I haven't done it myself, I don't know, but I from talking to you and just listening to other free divers, it seems like an unbelievable experience when you go down to those depths. And do you get it every single time, or could it be like every other time, or do you always get it?
This sensation, you can feel it in a shallow water too.
Okay.
But you must to accept many things, and you need to train it too. Yeah. Then when you start to free diving, you will really start to free diving, you will feel the sensation.
Yeah.
It's the treasure.
Yeah.
Karoline, can I ask, in terms of people who start off free diving, do sometimes people overdo the breath holds? Because even when we're working with, we do breath holds, of course, and you know, you could be working with one person and their reaction to a breath hold is a lot stronger in terms of the panic and the feeling of suffocation, that it can bring up trauma. do you ever see people overdoing it with the breath holds? Sometimes it's a nice balance to get with breath holds, or do you think it's the adapted training that helps the person adjust to the breath holding?
I think the beginners, for the beginners, when I'm doing the freediving course, I don't put the people directly in the water because I do many exercises outside the water, because I try to work with the breath, the mind, and the emotions too, because everything is connected. So I give the information to try to avoid for the beginners, they are very afraid of everything. So when they are afraid, it affects the emotion, that affects the breath, that affects everything. It will affect the free dive too. So I work with them outside water, and we do some stretching. Then we do the belly breath, the full breath. We do a relaxation. We do a relaxation in the water, floating. And then after that, we start with a hypercapnic training, short apneas in the water without the mask, just to feel free in the water and accept the short CO2 high levels, but short, not bigger. And then when they realize that they can reach 30 seconds or 1 minute and they are happy, so I try to do the next training, that is a hypoxic training, that is a little bit stronger. So step by step,
yeah.
I work with the skills and also the other problems that appear during the course, because each student is different. So it's not a package. It starts to be a personal job for me, because I need to work with each one differently.
Yeah, in the Oxygen Advantage, we use the BOLD score as kind of a measurement for progression to see if,
That's nice.
And do you have something similar? So how would you know where a person is at so they can go down 5 meters or 10 meters or whatever? Do you have some marker to know where?
Yes. We try to consider in the beginning the first contraction, when the first contraction starts in the static apnea. It's a very important point for us. And how many contractions the student can accept in the beginning, it's important. But before feel the contractions, there is another adaptation. It's not do it to the CO2 level, high CO2 level. It's another adaptation that we need to have it. If you don't training and you stop the rib cage, we have a barometric sensors, and the brain is not adapted to feel your rib cage stop it. So the first training is short apneas, just to accept the rib cage stop it. It's the first physiological response for apneas. If you don't move your rib cage, the brain will perceive it and send a message to breathe. But this message to breathe is not due to the high CO2 level. It's just because the rib cage is stopped. That is why in the beginning, I tell to the students to move the air from the lungs to the mouth without lose the air. And then the urge to breathe and the contraction stop.
So you say from the legs to the mouth?
Yeah, we put the air from the lungs to the mouth like that. And breathe again.
Okay.
Then you can reach 1 minute to 130 seconds.
So this is
in the beginning. And then the real signal of the high CO2 appear.
So Caroline, just to go back through that. So what you're saying is, when you do a breath hold, your brain has interpreted that your ribs have stopped moving completely. And because your ribs have stopped moving, your brain is sending the impulse to breathe. So you're tricking your ribs by moving air from your lungs and back again. Yeah, this is we always kind of interpreted that it was the discomfort signals from the diaphragm that were sending a message through the brain, which terminated the breath hold time. And there could be so many different things involved with this. It's so complex, and yes, you know.
But it's a trick only for the beginning.
Yes. Okay.
It's just to surpass the very difficult moment in the beginning. It's very, very hard to cross the contraction, the urge to breathe. And then if you do this trick, you feel more comfortable to go beyond a little bit.
Do you think that by training people to surrender to the feeling of air hunger, that you build up their breath, that you build up their willpower and their stress coping ability outside of the freediving? So if you're working with a vulnerable, say for example, you're working with somebody who gets quite stressed quite easily, and you're teaching them the ability to cope with air hunger, and they are able to relax into this discomfort, that then when they get a stressful event in their normal everyday life, that they can cope with it much better because they have trained their body and mind to be able to surrender. Does that make sense?
Yes, completely.
Do you think it is possible?
I think Patrick, when you train freediving, you are able to control many situations outside the water, but mainly because what I told you in the beginning, and you control the breath, you control your mind, you control the energy. You can use your energy better. The whole body can do it. It's not only to do freediving, it's for your life.
Yes.
Yeah, it's for the whole body, and this is very important. That is why I think teach freediving is beautiful, but teach how to breathe, and it's amazing.
What would you say are the main benefits for most people? Is it their general well-being, their ability to focus, happier? Like, what do you see the main effects?
I think what I found in my courses for the beginnings is difficult to breathe better, mainly because they breathe short and through the mouth. And I think all the people today are in a hyperventilated state outside the water. So I think the first great benefit is balance the CO2 again. Put the body in a healthy situation again. And then you can improve to do any sports. But first, you will improve the balance, the CO2 balance, to oxygen the whole body better. And then we can start to do everything you want to do because you are breathing better again. You control it. Then, if you start to do the training, you will also apply the mental control because you are breathing in another rhythm. You know your thoughts. You can control your thoughts. You are not a kind of slave of your emotion that destroy your breath, that destroy your body. So you have a key of that. You can control better your health, your thoughts, your emotions. I think outside the water, I become a better human because freediving offer me more than this, offer me to learn how to breathe too. It's a paradoxal.
Yeah.
It's paradoxal because you hold your breath, but to hold your breath, you must to learn how to breathe better.
Yeah. So you have to breathe correct in order to hold those long breath holds. So it seems to me that this could be beneficial for somebody who is depressed. Have you trained people who are depressed that can change their states, that get into these flow states? I don't know if they have breathing problems coming in, but it seems to me that it could be helpful.
Yeah, yes, also. Yeah. Because depressive people breathe very short, also very short. So the happiness helps you to breathe better too. So the body position, the emotional state, happiness state also contribute to you to breathe better.
And also the pressure from the water is also beneficial.
Oh yes,
so,
yes, completely.
Yeah, so I'm absolutely fascinated.
It very much makes sense. So in some ways, because when you can accustom, I think there's a number of aspects here. One is the physiological change in response that you're able to hold your breath for longer, so your tolerance to CO2 buildup is better, your tolerance to drop lowered oxygen is better. You're able to surrender. There's a psychological aspect in terms of surrendering to the feeling of air hunger, but when you have improved CO2 tolerance and a longer breath hold time, normally we see a slower respiratory rate, and we see more breathing from the lower regions of the lungs using the diaphragm. And slow breathing and low breathing in turn then is going to help strengthen the baroreflex, which in turn then is improving vagal tone, which would be very, very helpful with people with mental health issues. I think there's a lot going on here. You know, we should watch a video of you doing a dive. And because, you know, maybe we're talking about it. So Karoline, I'm just going to do a share screen here. I'm not sure even if this is a good one. It may not be. So do you see that one there?
Yes.
Do you recognize it?
Is this in Italy?
It's the Deep Joy. Yes, it's a dive at 40 meters and in Italy.
Yeah.
So
the Y40.
We can barely see you. You're down here, and I'm not sure if you're on your way back up or if you're. Okay, so it's pretty impressive, to say the least.
Was that a minute and 27 seconds? So, how much of an effort is that for you? 40 meters.
40 meters. The speed is around 1 meter per second. It's around it. So 1 minute 20, 1 minute 30 seconds to go down and come back again.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Isn't it? It's cool.
Yeah. We have to try that, Patrick, and see how it works out.
Yeah, that's for
we
sure.
need to go to.
You're first.
We need to go there to that.
It'll be baby steps, huh? No, it's so cool. So cool. In terms of Giuliano, you're a fellow country person with Karoline here. And freediving, is it popular in Brazil?
Yeah, I think it is, right, Carl? For me, it's not so. I like to freedive, but I never tried a lot. No.
You don't want to get into a
sometimes.
competition with Karoline, no?
No.
He's coming to my island. He's coming.
I'm coming to Florianopolis.
Yes.
I'll make the training with Carol also.
Yeah.
You're going to do it. That's super. Great.
No, I mean, I'm definitely, I've always been fascinated. So I definitely want to try one of these days, but I guess it's something you really have to train for. I mean, you have no room for error, really. So, so I guess you really have to be careful. So,
Yeah.
but it would be very exciting to see how much you can improve, actually.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Carol,
So-
if people wanted, oh, sorry, Giuliano, there.
No, I'm just gonna say that soon I'll be training for Carol.
Yes.
And if people wanted to make contact with you, how would they find out about you? What's your website, or do you have Instagram or social media?
Yeah, they can find me at Instagram, Karoline Meyer Official, or at my website, karolmeyer.com.br, Brazil. And they will find me there.
Great. Because, you know, we were in the space of breathing, and it's funny, Daniel, I haven't really gave the free diving so much thought, even though a lot of the articles that we look at in terms of the breath holding are coming from the free dive community. It's where a lot of the research on breath holding has originated from.
Yeah.
That there's a nice fit here.
Yeah. And again, I think even though you see the hematocrit values go up and all the physiological changes, I think they're great. But I think the mental aspect, again, and hard to measure, but I think those are substantial, both on a temporary basis when you alter your states, but also on a permanent basis when you get those states. I think so I'm deeply fascinated by it. Absolutely. So we hope to learn more about that, Karoline, in the future. So we hope